2:17 p.m. on a crowded Thursday afternoon. The city moves with the calm rhythm of ordinary life. Coffee machines hiss inside the corner cafe. Construction hammers echo somewhere down the block. People walk past you with shopping bags, scrolling through their phones, talking about dinner plans, weekend trips, office deadlines. Traffic lights change. Buses hiss to a stop. Everything feels routine, predictable, safe. No one realizes they are living the final seconds of normal life. Then every phone on the street screams. Not a ringtone, not a vibration. Not the soft ping of a notification. A violent mechanical shriek cuts through the air. The unmistakable scream of the emergency alert system. It's loud enough to stop conversations mid-sentence, loud enough to freeze an entire street full of people in place. Hundreds of hands instinctively reach into pockets. Screens light up everywhere at once. The display on your phone glows bright red, the words so large they barely fit on the screen. Ballistic missile threat inbound. Seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. For a moment, the entire street falls silent. Not confusion, not panic yet, just silence. The eerie, impossible quiet of 300 people trying to process words that don't belong in reality. Words that sound like something from history books, not from today. Then the air raid sirens begin. Not from your phone this time, from the city itself. High above the rooftops, mounted on buildings that haven't been used outside of drills since the Cold War, the real sirens start to wind up. The sound rises slowly, a deep mechanical howl that climbs higher and higher until it vibrates in your chest. It's a sound designed for one purpose: to override logic, to crush rational thought, to trigger the oldest survival instinct buried inside the human brain. Run. The silence shatters instantly. People scream. Shopping bags drop to the pavement. Car doors are abandoned in the middle of traffic. Someone crashes through a storefront window trying to get inside. Within seconds, the entire street transforms into a wave of raw panic. Hundreds of people moving at once, pushing, shoving, running like prey that has just spotted the predator. And almost everyone runs in the same direction. Underground. The subway entrance sits 50 feet away, the familiar staircase dropping into the earth. Usually it's just another part of the city, commuters, train schedules, the smell of metal and electricity. But now it looks like salvation. A flood of bodies surges toward the stairs. People shove past each other, desperate to reach the tunnel first. The entrance clogs instantly. Shoulder to shoulder, a human traffic jam of pure survival instinct. Someone trips near the top of the staircase, an elderly woman, and disappears beneath the rushing crowd before anyone can stop. A father clutches two children against his chest, forcing his way downward, step by step, while people scream behind him. Everyone shares the same thought, burned into their minds by decades of movies, drills, and Cold War warnings. When the bombs come, you go underground. You reach the top of the subway stairs with the rest of them. From here you can see down into the tunnel. The fluorescent lights still glow. The turnstiles have been abandoned. Hundreds of terrified people are already packing the platform below, crowding together against the concrete walls like animals seeking shelter from a storm. And that's when you stop. Because something inside your brain has just finished a calculation that everyone else is too frightened to make. You look at the staircase, at the tunnel, at the endless stream of people cramming themselves into a narrow concrete tube 60 feet below the surface, and suddenly you understand what you're actually looking at. Not a shelter, a mass grave. The crowd surges past you like water around a rock. Someone slams into your shoulder and curses. Another person shouts for you to move, to get out of the way, but you can't move. Because in that moment, a brutal realization locks into place. Underground isn't safety. Underground is where people go to die. And you have maybe 90 seconds before the sky above the city turns into fire. You step away from the subway entrance while hundreds more rush past you. Your mind races through the physics that none of them are considering. Because when a nuclear weapon detonates over a city, the first thing that arrives isn't the blast, it's the flash. A burst of thermal radiation traveling at the speed of light. A wave of heat so intense it ignites everything flammable across miles of city in the same instant. Paper, wood, plastic, curtains, furniture, trees, cars, human skin. Thousands of separate fires erupt at once, scattered across the urban landscape like sparks in dry grass. And those fires don't stay small. They merge. They feed on each other. They become something far worse. A firestorm. Fire consumes oxygen to burn. A single house fire can devour nearly 5,000 cubic feet of oxygen every minute. Now imagine every building, every vehicle, every structure across a 10-mile radius burning at the same time. The firestorm doesn't just consume oxygen where the flames are. It creates a vacuum. Air is sucked inward from every direction, from streets, from buildings, and from underground spaces, including subway tunnels. History already proved what happens next. In 1945, during the firebombing of Tokyo, temperatures inside the burning city climbed so high that people who jumped into rivers to escape the flames were literally boiled alive in the water. But the people who hid underground didn't burn. They suffocated. The firestorm above them devoured the oxygen in their shelters until the air simply vanished. When rescuers later opened the bunkers, they found rows of bodies sitting upright against the walls, looking almost peaceful, like they had fallen asleep. Because there had simply been nothing left to breathe. You stand on the sidewalk now, watching more people rush past you toward the subway entrance. And you know exactly what is going to happen to them. The blast wave will collapse the entrances with debris. Fires will rage above the city for hours, maybe days. The air inside those tunnels will slowly grow thinner. First they'll feel dizzy, then tired. Then someone will sit down against the wall to rest, and they will never stand up again. By tomorrow morning, that subway platform will be filled with bodies from one end to the other. Not burned, not crushed, just empty, like someone quietly turned off a switch. The sirens are still wailing around you, echoing off the buildings, mixing with car alarms and the distant crash of breaking glass, as desperate people smash their way into buildings searching for shelter. You glance at the sky. 60 seconds left, maybe less. So you turn and start running. But not down, not into the earth where everyone else's instincts are pushing them. You run the opposite direction, scanning buildings, windows, structures, searching for something very specific. Because in a nuclear strike, the safest place isn't the deepest place. It's the smartest place. They don't understand what concrete really does during a firestorm. Most people think concrete means safety. They've been told that their entire lives. Concrete doesn't burn after all. It doesn't melt like plastic. So the logic feels obvious. Surround yourself with concrete and you'll be protected from the inferno outside. That part is true. Concrete doesn't burn. But in a nuclear firestorm, that isn't protection. It's a trap. Because concrete does something far more dangerous than burning. It absorbs heat, and it holds on to it. When the thermal pulse from a nuclear detonation sweeps across the city, it doesn't just ignite fires. It floods every surface with an intense wave of energy. Concrete walls, sidewalks, buildings. Everything exposed to that flash begins absorbing enormous amounts of heat within seconds. Temperatures on exposed concrete surfaces can spike past 1,000 degrees almost instantly. But concrete is dense, heavy, thick. It doesn't release heat quickly. Instead, it stores that heat deep inside its mass, like a giant thermal battery charging itself with fire. Every inch of that material becomes saturated with energy that has nowhere to go. Now imagine what happens inside a basement. You're surrounded by concrete on every side. The floor, the walls, the ceiling. Above you, the city is burning. The thermal pulse has already superheated the exterior structure of the building. And that heat begins slowly bleeding inward. At first it feels harmless. The air becomes warm, slightly uncomfortable. People shift around, wiping sweat from their foreheads. Someone laughs nervously and says it's just nerves. But the temperature keeps rising. Warm becomes hot. Hot becomes suffocating. And then it becomes deadly. During the firebombing of Dresden in 1945, thousands of civilians rushed into basements believing they had found the safest possible shelter. Thick stone walls, underground protection, exactly the kind of place people assume will save them from a burning city. Days later, when rescue teams finally opened those basements, they discovered something horrifying. The people inside hadn't burned. They had been cooked. The surrounding concrete and masonry had absorbed so much heat from the firestorm above that the basements became sealed ovens. Temperatures kept climbing long after the flames outside had already passed. The trapped civilians had torn off their clothing, desperate to cool their bodies. Some had clawed at the walls trying to escape. Most were found collapsed on the floor. They died from hyperthermia in spaces that had seemed perfectly safe when they first entered them. Modern buildings are even worse. Today's construction is designed for energy efficiency. Homes and offices are built to be airtight, insulated, perfectly sealed environments that trap heat inside during winter and keep it out during summer. Under normal circumstances, that efficiency is a luxury. In a nuclear firestorm, it becomes a death sentence. Because when the surrounding structure reaches 150 degrees and keeps climbing, that airtight seal means the heat has nowhere to escape. Your basement doesn't cool down. It slowly turns into a pressure cooker. You sprint past an office building where a crowd is pouring into the underground parking garage. Dozens of cars are already racing down the ramp, engines screaming as drivers try to reach the lowest level. People abandon their vehicles halfway down and run on foot, believing they're doing the smartest thing possible. Multiple underground levels, thick reinforced concrete, hundreds of parking spaces. It looks like a fortress. But physics doesn't care about what looks safe. Heat normally rises, yes, but in an enclosed environment, heat doesn't simply float upward and disappear. It spreads evenly through the entire space. Once the structure absorbs enough energy, the temperature equalizes everywhere. The lowest level of that garage will eventually become just as hot as the top level. Just as hot as the basement. Just as hot as the inside of a pizza oven. And that's assuming the structure remains standing. You're looking at the city differently now. Not as buildings. As physics problems. Glass windows will shatter instantly from the blast pressure. Steel beams will twist and warp as temperatures rise. Concrete will crack and fracture from rapid thermal expansion. Some structures will partially survive. Others will collapse completely. But the most dangerous place of all is still underground. 40 seconds. Your lungs burn as you sprint. Your legs feel like they're tearing apart with every step, but adrenaline overrides the pain. Around you, people are still flooding into basements, tunnels, subway entrances, and underground garages, following instincts that evolved for threats that look nothing like this one. When storms come, humans seek caves. When predators attack, animals hide underground. But nuclear war is not a storm. It's not a predator, and the place those instincts tell you to go is exactly where you shouldn't be. You pass a construction site where workers are abandoning tools and running toward the unfinished basement of a half-built building. Exposed rebar sticks out of concrete walls. Temporary supports hold up slabs that will eventually become office floors. They think thick concrete will save them, but they're not thinking about weight. A typical 10-story office building contains roughly 5,000 tons of material: steel beams, concrete slabs, air conditioning systems, glass, wiring, furniture, everything that makes the structure functional. 5,000 tons suspended above the ground. When the shockwave from a nuclear detonation slams into that building, the structure will shudder violently. Windows explode outward, support beams twist under sudden pressure, and if the building collapses, all 5,000 tons are coming straight down. If you're inside the basement when that happens, you might survive the initial impact. The concrete ceiling might hold long enough to keep you alive. Dust fills the air. Lights go out, people cough and shout in the darkness. But then reality sets in. You're buried. The stairwell is crushed. The exits are sealed by twisted steel and collapsed floors stacked 40 feet high above you. You're not in a shelter. You're inside a tomb. Even if rescue teams existed, and after a nuclear exchange, they probably won't. Digging through thousands of tons of rubble would take weeks. Heavy machinery would be required. Clear roads, organized crews. None of that will exist anymore. The streets above will be blocked with debris and burning wreckage. Emergency services will be overwhelmed or destroyed. Hospitals will be gone. If you're trapped underground, you're alone. You might have a few hours of breathable air, maybe a day if the space is large. After that, nothing. The 2023 Turkey-Syria earthquake showed exactly how this scenario unfolds. Buildings collapsed into their own basements, creating small voids where survivors remained trapped for days. Some were rescued, but those survivors were statistical miracles. Most people died waiting. But earthquakes don't set entire cities on fire. Earthquakes don't cover the rubble with radiation, and earthquakes don't destroy the very rescue systems meant to save the trapped. In a nuclear disaster, if you're buried underground, no one is coming. 25 seconds, the sirens continue to scream across the city, echoing through the streets. Their tone seems unstable now, warbling, cutting in and out like the system itself is beginning to fail. You force your mind to focus. You don't need the deepest shelter. You need the right shelter. Not too high, not too low. Protection without burial. Concrete, but not underground concrete. You scan the street desperately. Then you see it. A parking structure attached to an office building. 6 stories tall. Reinforced concrete. Strong, open, and stable. But you're not heading toward the basement ramp where everyone else is running. You're going up. You burst through the entrance and sprint toward the stairwell. Every instinct in your body screams that you're making a mistake. Go down. Hide deeper. Put as much earth between you and the sky as possible. But instincts don't understand nuclear physics. You take the stairs 2 at a time. 2nd floor, 3rd floor. Your chest burns like fire. Your legs tremble violently. But you keep climbing. Because you know something the panicked crowds outside don't know. The safest place during a nuclear detonation isn't the highest point. And it isn't the deepest. It's the geometric center. You reach the 4th floor of the 6-story structure and slam through the stairwell door. Empty parking spaces stretch around you. Wind whistles faintly through the open sides of the building. You run toward the exact center of the structure, not near the edges where the blast pressure will strike first. Not near the open walls where shattered debris will fly inward. Not near the windows that will explode into razor-sharp shrapnel. You stop at the precise middle of the floor. Here, you're surrounded by the maximum amount of concrete and steel in every direction. Above you, below you, around you. For the first time since the sirens began, you stop moving. And you wait for the sky to explode. The parking structure has something most buildings hide deep inside their design. A reinforced concrete core. Right in the center of the garage stands the elevator shaft, a thick vertical column built like a fortress. Engineers design these cores to carry enormous loads. The weight of the entire building transfers through them. Floor after floor of concrete and steel is anchored into this central spine. It's a box inside a larger box. No windows, no exposed glass, just layers of reinforced concrete stacked around a hollow vertical shaft where elevators normally travel. Even if parts of the outer structure fail, the core often remains standing because it was built to hold everything else up. You sprint toward it, not the elevator itself. Elevators are death traps when power dies. But the small lobby where the doors open on each floor, a compact room surrounded by thick walls designed to protect the machinery behind them. You burst inside. The space is tiny, maybe 8 feet by 8 feet. Concrete walls on all sides. A narrow bench bolted along one wall. No windows, no openings except the stairwell door you just came through. 10 seconds. Your breathing is ragged now. Your pulse pounds in your ears like a drum. Every instinct tells you to run again, to keep moving, to do something, anything, to escape what's coming. But there's nowhere left to run. You drop to the floor, back pressed against the interior wall, arms wrapped tightly around your knees. You curl your body inward, making yourself as compact as possible. Position matters. If you lie flat, your body spreads out, exposing more surface to flying debris. If you stand, the blast could throw you across the room like a rag doll. But crouched low against a solid wall, you become a smaller target for whatever violence the next few seconds will unleash. 5 seconds. The reinforced concrete around you is about to experience forces it was never designed to endure. Pressure waves. Thermal shock. Structural vibration that will ripple through the building like a violent earthquake. But you aren't at street level where the firestorm will strip oxygen from the air. You aren't in the basement where heat will accumulate and collapsing floors could bury you alive. You are suspended in the middle of the structure, the strongest point in the entire building, the geometric center of a concrete web. 0. The flash comes first. Even through layers of concrete, even without windows, the light finds its way through microscopic cracks and seams. For a split second, the entire world outside turns brighter than the sun. A silent, impossible brightness that burns through the gaps like lightning trapped inside stone. Then comes the sound. Not a normal explosion. Something deeper. Something heavier. It arrives as a crushing pressure that slams into the building and drives straight through the structure. Your ears feel like they're being forced inward, as if invisible hands are pushing against your skull. The entire building moves. Concrete isn't supposed to sway. But it sways now. The floor trembles violently. Dust rains from the ceiling in a fine gray cloud. Somewhere outside the elevator lobby, a massive impact crashes through the garage. The sound of something enormous collapsing or slamming into the structure. The lights die instantly. Total darkness. But the walls hold. The ceiling holds. The floor holds. You remain exactly where you dropped. Crouched, shaking, breathing in the darkness. The air tastes like powdered concrete and dust. It scratches your throat with every breath. But it's still air. You're still breathing. Somewhere above you, the city has become an ocean of fire. The blast wave has shattered windows across miles of skyline. Buildings are collapsing in sections. Thousands of fires are merging together, feeding the growing firestorm that now begins pulling oxygen inward, like a giant invisible lung. Below you, 50 feet down in the basements and tunnels, the people who ran underground are starting to feel the first signs of what they walked into. Smoke is creeping through ventilation shafts. Temperatures are rising. Exits are blocked by fallen debris. But here, inside this small concrete room in the center of a larger concrete structure, the air is still moving. The temperature is still survivable. Not safe. Nowhere in this city is safe anymore, but survivable. You stay crouched against the wall. Your muscles tremble from adrenaline and exhaustion. Another shock wave rolls through the structure. A reflected pressure wave bouncing from nearby buildings that have collapsed. The garage shudders again, metal groaning somewhere in the darkness. But the central core holds. That is what it was designed to do. Outside your small sanctuary, chaos continues. You hear distant crashes as weakened structures give way. The echo of shattering glass drifts through the parking levels. Somewhere far away, something metallic screams under pressure before finally tearing apart. The building is wounded, but it's still standing. And in the quiet between those distant sounds, another noise begins to reach your ears. From below, from the basement levels. Faint voices. Panicked shouting. The people who rushed underground are already realizing something is wrong. Air is growing heavy. The temperature is climbing. Smoke is starting to seep into spaces that were supposed to protect them. The deeper they are, the worse it becomes. But here, suspended between the burning sky and the suffocating depths, you are in the eye of the storm. The geometric center holds while the edges burn and the depths choke. Minutes pass in darkness. Eventually the sirens stop. Not because the danger is over, but because the systems that powered them are gone. Now the only sounds left are settling concrete, distant collapses, and the slow thunder of a city tearing itself apart. You sit there in the dark, breathing carefully, listening to the ruins of the world shifting around you. 5 minutes ago you were walking down a normal city street. Now you are one of the few people who survived the first moment of nuclear war. But survival in the first 5 minutes doesn't guarantee survival tomorrow, because the real test begins now. Radiation, firestorms, collapse of every system that once kept the city alive. The next 72 hours will decide whether surviving this moment actually matters.